Hi, my name is Luna. I'm 32 years old. And I'm a registered nurse living in Austin, Texas. Most days, I wake up before sunrise. Brew a cup of hazelnut coffee. Water, my plants there are about 37 of them. I've counted and head out to St. Elmo's Medical Center where I work in the pediatric ward. I spend my days trying to bring comfort to sick kids and worried parents. And most nights I come home mentally exhausted. But fulfilled. My life, it wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And it was enough until it wasn't. I lived alone in a cozy apartment just off South Congress Avenue. Surrounded by quirky boutiques, taco trucks, and a mural of Willie Nelson that smiled at me every time I parked. My place was tiny, but it felt like a greenhouse. Ferns in the bathroom, ivy crawling across my bookshelf. Succulents lined the windowsill like little green guardians. I'd found peace in simplicity, and I wore that peace like a second skin. My family complicated but loving. My mom, Angela, teaches 4th grade in a public school. She's the kind of person who bakes banana bread for neighbors, going through a divorce and knits hats for premature babies. Dad, Mikhail, is a retired Marine who hides a soft heart behind gruff jokes and ESPN. And then there's my older sister, Sierra. Sierra was everything. I wasn't. Polished, charismatic, ambitious. She'd been the prom queen, the student body president, the girl who never got a B. Now she was a high-end real estate agent with a client list full of Instagram influencers and tech founders. She married Grayson Bennett, former hedge fund guy turned financial advisor with perfect teeth and a yacht club membership. Together, they were Austin royalty. Their home, their social media, their lifestyle, it all sparkled. We were close. At least I thought we were. We had Sunday brunches, group texts, birthday surprises. Sierra would sometimes tease me lightly about my thrift store cardigans and my plant hoarding. But it always felt like sister stuff. Nothing cruel. Just hair being hair. 6 months ago, they moved into a stunning modern farmhouse in Barton Hills. It had an infinity pool, a wine cellar, and even a dumbwaiter. At the housewarming, Sierra gave us the tour like she was guiding us through Architectural Digest. She put her arm around me and whispered, "You could have something like this too. Luna, you're smart. You just need to stop thinking so small." I laughed. But inside, something stung. I wasn't jealous, at least not in the way people usually mean it. I didn't want the house. I wanted to be seen, respected, not pitied or pitied in disguise. Still, I brushed it off. We were different people. That was okay. I had my world, and she had hers. But everything changed on a Tuesday. I was halfway through my shift, helping a little boy named Ezra recover from surgery. He was drawing space dinosaurs with scented markers. And I was holding his IV line so he could reach the blue. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I usually don't check calls during work, but I'd been waiting on news about a friend's lab results. So I excused myself into the hallway. "Hello. This is Luna Hart. Miss Hart?" "Oh, this is Diane from Travis County Credit Union. I'm calling regarding the past due payments on your mortgage 3 months delinquent. We've sent several notices." "I'm sorry, what mortgage?" There was a pause. Then, a tone shift. Polite but firm. "The loan on 1,124 Sycamore Ridge. The balance is $712. Ling. You signed in January. First payment was made February. Last payment was in April." I froze. My hands felt like stone. I think there's been a mistake. I said, I don't own a home. I rent? I've never even applied for a mortgage. She cleared her throat. Miss Hart, we have a full application package on file. Einkommensdocuments. Credit score of 764. Employment verification from St. Talsandfro.o. Elmos. And multiple signed forms, including closing documents. Sycamore Ridge. That was Sierra's street. No? It couldn't be. She continued. But I barely heard her. I leaned against the wall, knees shaking. My name echoing in my mind like it didn't belong to me anymore. My name. My job. My life used for something I didn't do. As I hung up the phone, something inside me cracked, not loudly. Not all at once. It was the quiet kind of shatter, like glass breaking underwater. That evening, after my shift, I went to the credit union. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed them to show me how someone had become me on paper and taken everything I had built for granted. I thought it had to be some clerical error or identity theft from a stranger. But deep down, something darker tugged at me, because I already knew whose house it was. And I already knew who had access to everything about me. The next morning, I returned to the credit union on Lamar Boulevard, still wearing my scrubs from the night shift. I hadn't slept. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my name on a mortgage I'd never signed, attached to a house that didn't belong to me at least. Not in the way anyone would want. A loan officer named Rick, late 40s, polite but distant, greeted me in a sterile, fluorescent-lit office that smelled faintly of printer toner and burnt coffee. We've pulled the documents, he said, laying a manila folder on the table like a coroner presenting a file on a dead body. Everything appears legitimate, but if you're claiming identity theft, you'll want to look through this carefully. I opened the folder with trembling hands. There it was. Loan application, pay stubs, tax returns, credit report, employment verification from St. Plold 0 Elmo's Medical Center, a copy of my driver's license, my signature over and over again, except it wasn't my signature. Not really. It looked like mine, same slant, same loops, but it felt wrong, off, forced, like someone had practiced a mimicry, not muscle memory, a performance. Then I saw the address listed under borrower 1124 Sycamore Ridge Drive. Sierra and Grayson's house? The same house where we toasted mimosas in the kitchen during the housewarming party, where Sierra had laughed and said, "You know, Luna, this marble island cost more than your car." A joke? Or was it my breath came in short bursts? I looked up at Rick. "Can I have copies of these?" He hesitated. "Technically, they're your records. But yes, we can make copies for you. I'd strongly recommend contacting the police and filing a formal report. Identity theft is a serious crime." I nodded slowly. Numb. I thanked him and left, gripping the folder like it might float away if I let go. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could even start the engine. I couldn't cry. Not yet. My brain hadn't caught up with my heart. All I could do was repeat the same sentence over and over in my head. My sister used my name. My sister used my name. My sister used my name. It still didn't make sense. It didn't feel possible. But the evidence, it was sitting right next to me in the passenger seat. Back home, I paced my one-bedroom apartment, every corner suddenly claustrophobic. I couldn't stay still. Couldn't focus. I called in sick to work first time in years. I told my boss I had the flu, which wasn't entirely untrue. I was sick, just not in the way she thought. I dug out my important documents. My real signature on my passport and nursing license. I compared them to the forged ones. Close. Too close. Whoever had done this knew my handwriting, knew my salary, knew I worked night shifts and rarely checked my mail. Only one person fit that description. But even then, I still didn't want to believe it. I made 3 phone calls that afternoon. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I requested fraud alerts, reviewed my credit reports, and discovered a financial graveyard I hadn't known existed. 3 credit cards had been opened in my name, one with a $25. Zero limit maxed out. A personal loan for $38? Ling? A home equity line of credit on a house I didn't own. All within the last 9 months. My credit score, once a solid 730, had dropped to 518. I felt physically ill, like someone had crawled inside my skin and rearranged everything without permission. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sierra smile at that housewarming party. I saw the way she poured champagne into crystal flutes and said, "We did it." "Babe." To Grayson. I heard her laugh. Bright. Effortless. And suddenly cruel. But still, I clung to one fragile, stupid hope. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe there's some mistake. Some administrative nightmare. The next day, I called a handwriting analyst. His name was Marcus Bell. Retired FBI. Now working out of a modest office in East Austin. He wore glasses and spoke in clipped cross-ended, precise sentences. I gave him copies of the mortgage documents and my real signature samples. After about 20 minutes of examining strokes, angles, and pressure points, he looked up. "These are forgeries," he said matter-of-factly. "Skilled forgeries. Whoever did this wasn't just copying. You can see where they slowed down. Especially on the capital L and the crossbar of the T. They were trying to be careful." "Can you testify to that?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. "If it comes to that, yes," he replied. "I'd recommend filing a police report. Quickly." I left his office in a daze. The final piece had clicked into place. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a stranger. It was Sierra, my sister. She knew everything about me, my social security number, my birthday, my employer, my credit habits. She had access to my apartment dozens of times. She knew where I kept my files. My documents were in an unlocked cabinet in my home office. Because I never thought I needed to protect myself from my own family. But now I knew the real danger hadn't come from outside my life. It came from inside it. And I had to decide soon what I was going to do about it. I spent the next 48 hours trapped inside my apartment with nothing but printed lies and a spiraling mind. The manila folder from the credit union sat open on my kitchen table. Its contents spread like evidence from a crime scene, which, of course, it was. I stared at the forged mortgage application for the 100th time. Whoever had done this didn't just steal my name. They stole my credit score, my employment history, my address history, my entire financial identity. It wasn't just a fraud, it was a digital doppelganger wearing my skin. And I kept coming back to the same question. Why would Sierra do this to me? I didn't want to accuse her out loud, not yet. That made it too real. So instead, I kept digging. Quietly, carefully. I started with her social media. It was a curated gallery of luxury pictures of their backyard pool with fairy lights. Wine glasses by the fire pit. Lila and Aiden running across hardwood floors in matching pajamas. Number: grateful. Number: blessed. The more I looked, the more the cracks showed. 2 months ago, staycation vibes at a resort in Lakeway. But one photo had an odd caption from Grayson's account. Quickly deleted. That said, needed this escape more than you know. Last month, Sierra posted a boomerang of a delivery truck bringing in new furniture. But the tags had been removed the next day. Odd. I started texting mutual friends. Casually at first. Hey! How are Sierra and Grayson doing? Most replies were vague. Busy. Trying to stay afloat. But one friend, my former college roommate Natalie, texted back something that stopped me cold. Don't say I told you this, but back in March, Grayson approached my fiancé asking for a private loan, said they were in a tight spot but didn't want Sierra's parents to know. Sounded disparity? Desperate enough to steal. It still didn't feel possible. Sierra had always been the golden child. The one who got the job offers, the scholarships, the compliments at holiday dinners. And I had loved her for it. I'd never once been jealous. Just proud. And now? She had turned me into her safety net without asking. I needed more than intuition. I needed proof. So I started looking through my own email history. Sure enough, someone had set up a new Gmail address, lunahart84@gmail.com. Mine was Luna. Heart1984@gmail.com. Subtle. Deliberate. Sinister. And it had been used to sign up for paperless billing on several accounts opened in my name. Whoever did this knew how to impersonate me, and more importantly, they wanted to hide it from me. I called the fraud department of one of the banks and asked to verify the contact email for a Chase credit card I'd supposedly opened. They gave it to me without hesitation. It was the fake address. My stomach dropped. Then, I made the call I had been avoiding to the leasing office of Sierra's former condo downtown. I pretended to be doing a rental background check and asked if they had a record of recent tenants. The manager, a sweet woman named Pam, told me that yes, Sierra and Grayson had moved out in January, the exact month the mortgage had been approved for 1,124 Sycamore Ridge. And when I asked, casually, if the condo had internet service included, Pam said no, which meant the IP address the mortgage was submitted from, it would likely be traceable to that exact unit. It was all clicking together. Still, some stubborn part of me wanted a second opinion. Something objective. I contacted Marcus Bell again, the handwriting analyst, and asked for a full formal report. He agreed and sent me a notarized document breaking down the forged signatures versus my real ones. These are high-level forgeries. The report concluded, but with several inconsistencies in pressure application, letter formation, and hesitation, indicative of someone copying, not writing naturally. I read the words over and over. Not as a victim, but as someone preparing for battle. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was fact. Sierra had done this. The grief hit harder than the shock. I sat on the floor of my living room, knees pulled to my chest. Surrounded by paperwork and silence, my apartment, once my safe haven, now felt invaded by shadows of betrayal. I'd let Sierra in here dozens of times. She knew where I kept everything: my tax returns, my birth certificate, my lease agreement. Nothing had ever been locked. Why would it be? She was my sister. She used to braid my hair before middle school. She once defended me on the playground when a boy called me weird. When I broke my arm in high school, She sat by my bed and fed me cereal with a spoon. And now, she had forged my signature on a $712 mortgage. That night, I made a checklist: file formal police report, meet with attorney, contact credit repair agency, begin identity theft affidavit, notify Sierra. Not yet, because while every piece of evidence pointed at her, I still hadn't said it out loud. Once I did, there would be no turning back, and I needed to be absolutely sure that when I opened that door, I was ready for everything that would come crashing through it. It took me 3 more days to gather the courage to face her. 3 days of staring at my phone, hovering over her contact, thumb trembling, then pulling back. 3 days of reading and rereading the fraud affidavit, Marcus Bell's report, and the stack of evidence that no longer whispered doubt, they screamed betrayal. The grief was the worst part. Not the money, not the credit score, not even the stolen identity. It was the crack it put in my reality. Because when someone breaks your trust, especially someone you love, it doesn't just hurt. It rearranges the furniture in your mind. Suddenly, nothing feels where it used to be. You trip over questions. You stub your heart on memories. But eventually, I realized I couldn't move forward without facing her. So I texted Sierra. Hey, are you home this evening? I need to talk alone. She responded within minutes. Sure, come by. Kids are with mom. All good, all good. The words hit differently now. That evening, I pulled into the driveway of 1124 Sycamore Ridge Drive. The house looked beautiful in the golden hour light, white-paneled walls, black trim, lavender bushes blooming near the entrance. It looked like peace, like perfection, like everything that had been bought with my name. My stomach twisted as I rang the doorbell. Sierra opened the door with a smile. Barefoot, hair swept up in a loose bun. She looked casual, effortless, happy. Hey, sis, you okay? You look pale. I stepped inside. The scent of vanilla candles and fresh eucalyptus drifted through the air. I heard soft jazz playing from a speaker somewhere. She gestured to the kitchen island. Want tea? I've got that cinnamon chamomile you love. I sat down slowly. No. Thanks. I won't be long. She tilted her head. Reading my tone. What's going on? I reached into my bag and laid a thick folder on the marble. Her smile faded slightly. What's that? You tell me? I said. Quietly. She opened the folder. I watched her eyes skim the documents. Marcus Bell's analysis. The mortgage contract. Credit card statements. The fabricated Gmail address. The IP trace. Everything. She didn't speak. Her fingers froze over the signature page. Sierra, I said, my voice low. Did you use my identity to buy this house? The silence was deafening. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She didn't even look surprised. She closed the folder gently and said, it was just supposed to be temporary. The words hit me like ice water. Temporary, I echoed. You took out a mortgage in my name. You opened credit cards. You wrecked my credit. You risked my job. How is that temporary? I meant to fix it. She said, voice cracking slightly now. We were in a tight spot. Grayson lost a big client. We'd already put in the offer. Everything was moving fast. I just panicked. So you stole my life, I whispered. Because you panicked. No, don't say it like that. Her voice rose. I didn't steal your life. I borrowed your credit. I knew you had good standing. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could get it back on track before you ever noticed. I stood up, my hands shaking. You thought I wouldn't notice a $712. Oh, zero mortgage under my name, credit cards, a tanked credit score. She didn't answer. Tears welled in her eyes. But I didn't trust them. Not now. Not after what I had seen. How could you do this to me? I asked. Louder now. I'm your sister. I trusted you. I let you into my life. Into my home. You knew where I kept everything. You used that. I didn't know what else to do. She whispered. I was drowning. Grayson was too proud to ask our parents. I didn't want to lose this house. We needed something stable for the kids. The kids. There it was. The card everyone pulls when the lies unravel? I took a breath, trying to calm the storm in my chest. You should have come to me. You should have asked. I was ashamed. She said, you always made the right decisions. You were always responsible. You wouldn't have understood. I stared at her, this woman I had shared bunk beds with. Birthday cakes. Inside jokes, and I didn't recognize her anymore. No. You're wrong. I said, voice trembling. I would have understood. I would have helped. But you didn't give me the chance. You just took. And now everything I've worked for is collapsing. She buried her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it had, and now I had to choose. Do I press charges? Do I destroy her world the way she nearly destroyed mine? Or do I protect her and lose myself in the process? I left without another word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. The file still in my lap. Tears running down my face. Not just because I'd been betrayed, but because I knew that whatever decision I made next, there was no going back. I didn't go to work the next day. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I just lay in bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling fans spinning above me like the hours I couldn't count anymore. This wasn't exhaustion. This was something deeper. Something that wrapped itself around your bones and whispered lies in your ear. You're not safe. You're not loved. You're not real anymore. I had always thought that rock bottom would look like a breakdown on the street, or a bottle of pills on the bathroom counter. But in reality, it was just this stillness, numbness, a hollow echo inside your chest where your sense of self used to live. The betrayal wasn't just about credit scores and forged signatures anymore. It was about trust, about identity. Sierra hadn't just stolen numbers or a house. She had taken the version of me I worked so hard to become. The version that paid bills on time, built a stable life, kept a quiet dignity. And now that version of me was stained by her desperation and by my silence. Because I still hadn't reported her, I told myself it was for the kids. For Lila and Aiden, I loved them like my own. I couldn't imagine them watching their mother be led away in handcuffs. But deep down, it was more than that. I was afraid. Afraid of being the woman who sent her own sister to jail. Afraid of how people would look at me. Afraid that even if justice was served, I'd still feel this broken. I picked up my phone and opened the email from my apartment manager. My lease was up in 60 days. And based on my credit dip, I probably wouldn't get approved anywhere else. My stomach twisted. Everything was unraveling. One thread at a time. And where was Sierra posting Instagram stories from her wellness weekend in Fredericksburg? Sparobes. Wine glasses. Self-care Saturday. I dropped the phone and screamed. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just one hoarse, heartbroken noise that barely left my throat, but it felt like it scraped everything inside me on its way out. Later that evening, I got a text from my old friend Caleb. We used to work together in the ICU. He was now in community health, running outreach for victims of domestic fraud and trauma. Heard from Natalie. She told me what's been happening. I'm so sorry. Luna. If you want to talk, really talk, I'm here. No pressure. I stared at the message. It had been so long since someone offered help without asking for anything in return. I typed back, I'm not okay. Can we meet 15 minutes later? I was sitting across from Caleb at a small cafe in East Austin, hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea I hadn't touched. I can't feel anything anymore, I whispered. Caleb nodded slowly. That's how trauma works. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just switches the lights off. I looked out the window. Cars passed. People laughed on the patio. Life continued. But inside me, everything had paused. I didn't report her. I said, and I don't know why. You do know why? He said. You're kind. That's not weakness. Luna. That's what makes you, you. Tears welled up. But what if being kind is the reason she got away with it? Then maybe, he said gently, it's time to be kind to yourself. 2. That sentence hit me like thunder. I had been holding this guilt like a shield, protecting everyone except myself. Protecting the image of family, of loyalty, of the girl who doesn't make waves. But waves were coming anyway. And I had a choice, drown quietly, or start swimming. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and looked at my own reflection for a long time. My eyes were tired, my skin pale. But beneath it all was someone still standing, still breathing, still fighting. And I said it out loud. For the first time, she did this to me, and I didn't deserve it. I cried after that. Hard. But they weren't the same tears as before. These weren't tears of helplessness. They were tears of release. Because admitting the truth, even to myself, felt like taking the first breath after being underwater too long. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had slept well, but because something inside me had shifted. It was subtle, but powerful. A quiet determination rising up from the ruins. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. I made coffee and opened my laptop. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't Googling how to fix a ruined credit score or can you sue a family member for identity theft. Instead, I typed 3 simple words into the search bar, how to start over. And what came up wasn't magic. It was practical. Legal steps. Mental health recovery. Financial rebuilding. Support groups. Lawyers who specialize in family-related fraud. People who'd been through worse and survived. I bookmarked everything. Then I did something terrifying. I called my boss at the clinic. Her name was Dr. Maggie Rhodes' firm. Brilliant. No nonsense. A but fair. I told her the truth. Not all the gory details, but enough that my identity had been stolen, that I was in the middle of resolving it, that I hadn't wanted to come to work while living in that state of constant fear. There was a pause on the other end. And then she said, Luna, I'm proud of you. Take whatever time you need. When you're ready to come back, we'll be ready for you. I sat there holding the phone in disbelief. Not rejection. Not suspicion. Support. It was the first time in weeks that someone saw me as more than the victim in this story. And it reminded me that I wasn't powerless. So I made a list. A new list. Not of things that had been taken from me, but of things I could take back. File formal police report. Consult with legal aid on pressing charges. Meet with financial advisor. Freeze all open accounts. Write a personal victim statement. Tell the truth. To my circle, on my terms, that last one scared me the most. Because until now, I had kept everything quiet, embarrassed, ashamed, worried what people would think. But shame thrives in silence. And I was done giving it space to grow. So that night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote an email. A long one. I sent it to my close friends, my coworkers, my extended family, even a few old classmates who knew Sierra and me growing up. I didn't make it dramatic. I made it honest. Hi, I'm Luna Hart, and a few months ago, my identity was stolen by someone I love. I've spent weeks in disbelief, shame, and grief, but I'm choosing not to stay there. This is my truth. I'm speaking it now not for sympathy, but for clarity, for healing, for anyone else who's ever been betrayed and didn't know how to say the words. I hit send, and then I cried again. But it was different this time. Not because I was hurting, but because I finally felt free. The next few days brought an avalanche of replies. Some were shocked. Some were angry for me. Some shared stories of their own, a cousin who forged a will, a brother who racked up debt in their name, a best friend who stole years of trust. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. I wasn't alone. This didn't just happen to me. It happened to people with good hearts and open hands, people who loved without caution and were punished for it. But we weren't weak. We were resilient. And I had a choice. To let this define me or refine me, I chose the latter. That week, I met with a nonprofit legal group that helped victims of family-based financial crimes. They assigned me a lawyer named Jasmine Cole. She was sharp, compassionate, and brutally honest. This will be hard. Jasmine warned. It's not just a legal process, it's emotional warfare. But if you want justice, I'll help you get it. I nodded. I want to fight, but I want to heal, too. She smiled. Then we'll do both. Together, and for the first time, I believed her. I also scheduled a therapy session with Caleb's clinic. I figured if I was brave enough to fight in court, I could be brave enough to face my reflection in a therapist's office. The first session, I barely got through 5 minutes without crying. But every tear felt like a thread being pulled from a tangled knot. Slowly, the tension started to loosen, piece by piece. I was reclaiming my story, not just from Sierra, but from the silence that had held it hostage for too long. I was done whispering my pain. I was ready to speak it, to own it, to turn it into something bigger than myself. And I knew without question this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and nerves. I sat in the hallway outside Mediation Room 3C, my hands gripping a cup of water that I hadn't touched. Milayer. Jasmine sat beside me? Calm Sato. Steady. The exact opposite of how I felt inside. Today wasn't a trial. Not yet. It was a pre-mediation hearing. An opportunity to lay out what had happened, to give Sierra a chance to acknowledge the truth. And maybe, just maybe, make things right without dragging our entire family through court. But I wasn't holding my breath. The door opened. A clerk called both our names. I stood, legs trembling beneath me. Jasmine gave my arm a gentle squeeze. You're not alone. You have truth on your side. And so I walked in. Sierra was already seated across the long table. Her hair was neatly styled, makeup soft and polished. She wore the same expression she always used at parent-teacher meetings or bake sales calm. Presentable. Maternal. But I saw past it now. Behind her sat her lawyer, a man named Davis Walker. He looked bored already. I took a seat. Jasmine opened her file. The mediator, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a warmer smile, introduced herself and explained the rules. And then it began. Jasmine laid out the facts like a clean autopsy, no emotion. Just detail. Dates. Documents. Forged email addresses. The fake accounts. The mortgage approval with Luna's credit. The debt. The damage. Sierra said nothing at first. She kept her eyes on the table. When her lawyer finally spoke, and if reading the people fively seed and comstate, and comser seeded and comse. His tone was measured. We acknowledge that certain decisions were made in desperation. But my client is willing to cooperate to make restitution. We're proposing a structured repayment plan over the course of I cut in. My voice soft but clear. I'm not here for payment plans. Everyone turn to me. I'm here for the truth. I want it said. Out loud. Not just to me but to the record. To yourself. Sierra looked at me now. For real. There was something in her eyes. Guilt. Shame. Maybe a touch of fear. But also pride. That toxic mix of love and ego that makes people defend the indefensible. You want me to say I stole from you? She asked. I want you to say what you did. And mean it. She paused. Her lawyer leaned over to whisper. But she held up a hand. And then, finally she spoke. I took Luna's information without asking. I used it to buy my house. I opened credit accounts. I lied. I betrayed her. Silence fell over the room. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. The mediator nodded. That acknowledgement will be entered into record. But it wasn't for the record. It was for me. After everything, the lies, the silence, the gaslighting, the months of emotional limbo, I finally heard the truth from her lips. And it didn't fix everything. But it mattered. After the session, Sierra caught up to me in the hallway. Luna, she said. Wait. I turned. She looked so small suddenly. Like the older sister I once knew but hadn't seen in years. I know, sorry, isn't enough. She said. But I am. Truly. I was drowning. I thought you'd hate me forever if I asked. So, instead, I took. And I can never undo that. I nodded slowly. You're right. You can't. She swallowed hard. Do you hate me? The question stung more than I expected. No. I said. But I don't trust you. And I don't think I will for a long time. She blinked back tears. I guess that's fair. I'm not doing this to ruin your life. I said quietly. I'm doing this to save mine. She nodded. I hope one day we can sit in the same room again and not feel like strangers. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want that too, but because I wasn't ready. Not yet. I walked away from that courthouse taller than I'd felt in months. This wasn't the kind of victory people throw parades for. But for me, it was everything. It was the moment I stopped letting someone else rewrite my story. The moment I chose truth over comfort, healing over hiding, justice over silence. Healing doesn't come with a certificate or an end date. It comes in quiet. Scattered moments. In the middle of coffee shops. In the sound of your own breath finally slowing down at night. In the unexpected laugh that escapes when you didn't think joy was possible anymore. 2 weeks after the mediation, I found myself walking the Barton Creek Trail just outside Austin. The leaves had started to turn, trading heat for color. The air was cooler, but my heart just a little felt warmer. I wasn't fully okay. Not yet. But I was moving. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Caleb. Hey. A few of us are grabbing tacos at La Condesa tonight. You in? I stared at the message for a few seconds. The old me would have said yes in a heartbeat. The girl who loved long conversations and street food and music under the stars. The recent me, she stayed home. Walled up. Guarded. But maybe, just maybe, that wall didn't have to be permanent. I typed back. Count me in. That night, as we sat under the string lights of the patio, I listened to stories, laughter, and the hum of life continuing. I didn't have to say much. Just being there felt like reclaiming something that had been missing. Caleb leaned in at one point and whispered, "You're glowing." Luna. I rolled my eyes. That's the salsa. It's spicy. He grinned. Nah. It's something else. You're coming back. And that's when it hit me. He was right. Not the old version of me. Not the woman before the betrayal. But someone new. Wiser. Softer in the right places. Stronger in the others. The next morning, I did something bold. I opened a journal and wrote down 5 things that brought me peace. Warm tea at sunrise. The smell of eucalyptus in the shower. Nina Simone on vinyl. The sound of rain on my window. The fact that I survived. That last one, I circled it. Because survival wasn't passive, it was active. It was daily. It was brave. I started going back to the clinic twice a week. Easing into patient care. The staff welcomed me like I hadn't missed a beat. Doctor. Rhodes gave me a hug so tight I thought my ribs would crack. But I didn't mind. One afternoon, I stayed late to help a new nurse organize the pediatric supplies. As we laughed over mismatched Band-Aids and dinosaur stickers, a mother came in with her toddler. "Are you Luna?" she asked. Softly. He blinked. Surprised. "Yes, I heard about what happened," she said gently. "From a friend in the community group. I just wanted to say thank you for speaking up, for not staying silent." Her voice cracked a little. "My cousin's going through something similar. She thought she was the only one." I nodded. My throat suddenly tight. "She's not. Healing isn't just about your own wounds. It's about how your scars help light the path for someone else." That evening, I started sketching an idea that had been in the back of my mind for weeks, a support group, not just for financial fraud survivors, but for people who've been betrayed by those they love and had to rebuild from zero. I called it the Reclaim Circle. Caleb helped me reserve a community space downtown. Jasmine offered to volunteer legal tips for the group. Even Sierra, from a distance, quietly donated to the launch fund under a pseudonym. And at the first meeting, we had 6 people. 6 stories. 6 storms survived. I didn't preach. I just shared. My name is Luna Hart. I was betrayed by someone I trusted more than anyone. I lost my credit, my stability, and my sense of self. But I didn't lose my voice. And neither will you. People cried. People laughed. People listened. And somewhere in the middle of it all I laughed. Too. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer pretending I was broken beyond repair, because I was living proof that even after the worst kind of hurt, you can still find your way back to yourself. The first time a stranger cried while hugging me, I wasn't sure how to react. It was a warm Saturday morning, and I was standing outside the local community center where we held the Reclaim Circle meetings. I had just finished tidying up the chairs and tossing the leftover coffee cups into the recycling bin when a woman in her early 50s approached me. She had soft eyes and wore a denim jacket with a patch that read, "Hope Wins." "Are you Luna?" she asked. I smiled. That's me. Her eyes welled up instantly. My daughter sent me your story. She saw you speak online. She said, Mom, you have to listen to this woman. She's telling our story. And then she embraced me. Arms trembling. I thought I was too old to start over. You made me believe it's possible. In that moment, something shifted deep inside me. This wasn't just about Sierra anymore. Or even about me. This was bigger than one betrayal. It was about the thousands, maybe millions of people who have quietly carried wounds inflicted by those they trusted. People who are told to stay quiet for the sake of family. Who hide their pain behind polished smiles and keep their trauma buried under polite conversation. But when we speak, something miraculous happens. Shame loses its power. And healing becomes contagious. A few weeks later, I was invited to share my story at a regional mental health summit in Houston. I wasn't a professional speaker. And my hands shook the entire time I walked up to the podium. But I spoke anyway. I told the truth not just about what happened to me, but how it felt. The isolation. The rage. The guilt that wasn't even mine. The sleepless nights spent wondering if I had imagined it all. And the long, hard climb back to myself. I finished my talk with this. We are more than what was done to us. We are what we choose to build after. We are our courage, not our pain. And when we choose to rise, we give others permission to do the same. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, people lined up to talk. A social worker from El Paso. A father of two who'd lost his home to his brother's addiction. A college student whose ex stole her identity and her peace. And then a teenage girl, barely 16, who whispered, I didn't think anyone would understand. Now I know I'm not crazy. That one hit me the hardest. Because I remembered being that girl gaslit. Confused. Holding on to love even when it burned. And now I had become the person I had once needed. Back home, my apartment started to feel like a place of peace again. The furniture wasn't fancy. The walls weren't filled with expensive art. But there was warmth in the air. There was music again. I danced in the kitchen while making tea. Barefoot. With Nina Simone playing in the background, I lit candles without needing a reason. I smiled at my reflection in the mirror and meant it, and I began to write. At first, just blog posts. Raw. Honest essays about betrayal. Recovery. Resilience. I wrote like I was bleeding truth across the page, and it resonated. Messages poured in. People from all over the country. Some from Canada. Even Europe. You put words to what I've been carrying for years. I thought I was alone until I read this. You're helping me find my voice. Eventually, a publisher reached out. They wanted to turn my writings into a book. The working title, Reclaiming Luna: A Journey Through Betrayal. Boundaries. And Becoming Whole. At first, I laughed. Me, a book, but then I sat with it. And I realized, yes, this was no longer a chapter of shame. It was a testament, a record of survival. And maybe someone out there needed that book in the darkest night of their life to flip through its pages and find themselves in it. And what about Sierra? We didn't become close again. There was no magical reunion. But healing doesn't always end in a hug. Sometimes it ends in boundaries. We speak occasionally. Short messages. Mostly about logistics or updates. She completed her court-ordered restitution. Attends therapy now. Says she's working on herself. And I genuinely hope she is. Not because I need her to be better for me, but because every person deserves the chance to change if they choose to. I chose to heal. She can choose to grow. That's her journey. Mine is still unfolding. And every day, I'm writing it with intention, grace, and power. Hello again. My name is Luna Hart. And if you've stayed with me this far, thank you. This isn't the ending of a tragedy. This is the beginning of truth. I used to think healing would look like a return to who I was before everything broke. I was wrong. Healing, I've learned, is not about going back. It's about stepping forward wiser, scarred, but stronger. It's about building something better with the ashes of what was lost. I live differently now. Slower, gentler, more intentionally. I've learned to listen to the quiet voice inside me, the one I used to silence in favor of keeping peace, pleasing others, and doubting my instincts. That voice now guides me like a compass. Not long ago, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference in San Diego. The theme was Power Through Resilience. I stood on that stage, wearing the same silver necklace I wore the day I confronted Sierra. A reminder that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it whispers, "Keep going." And I told the audience, you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be honest. To choose yourself even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. They stood and clapped, but what moved me most wasn't the applause. It was what happened afterward. A young woman approached me. She had tears in her eyes, a tremble in her voice. I watched my mom lose herself to a betrayal she never recovered from. She said, "You made me believe it doesn't have to be that way. That we can break cycles. That pain doesn't have to be permanent." That was the moment I knew. This story no longer belongs only to me. It belongs to everyone who's ever been lied to, stolen from, used, or broken and still chose to rise. These days, I keep a jar on my bookshelf. Inside it are folded notes. One for each lesson this journey has given me pramen to the sate, pramen to verreven and steven to. I call it the jar of becoming. Let me share a few with you. Boundaries are love with structure. Silence can protect peace or enable harm. Learn the difference. You can forgive and still walk away. Not everyone will understand your healing. Heal anyway. The truth will not always set you free immediately, but it will always light the way. These aren't just sayings, they are hard-earned truths. Truths that came from nights on the bathroom floor, from trembling hands signing legal forms, from moments when I thought I had lost everything but somehow still had breath in my lungs. I've also learned that justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes, justice is peace. It's waking up without panic. It's drinking tea and tasting joy again. It's knowing that you didn't let the darkness define you. People sometimes ask if I regret exposing my sister, if I miss what we used to have, and I tell them I miss the idea of who I thought she was. But I don't miss the lies. I don't miss shrinking myself to make her comfortable. I don't miss carrying the weight of someone else's deception just to keep a false sense of family intact. Because family, real family, is truth. And if telling the truth breaks it, then maybe it was already broken. So now, I write, I teach, I speak, but more importantly, I live with open windows and open heart, with softness and steel, with music and silence, with hope and memory. Sometimes I still get sad. That's okay. Healing isn't linear, but I no longer fear sadness. I welcome it like an old friend who reminds me just how far I've come. If you're watching this or reading this, and you feel alone, please hear me. You are not broken. You were wounded. And wounds can heal. You are not weak for trusting someone who betrayed you. That is their shame to carry, not yours. You are not too far gone. Not too old. Not too tired to begin again. You are enough. Right here. Right now. even in the mess, even in the questions, especially in the questions. This story began with betrayal, but it ends with a choice. The choice to rise, the choice to reclaim, the choice to live fully and freely. My name is Luna Hart, and I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to become next. And so are you.